GDLS Canada, an industry leader dedicated to supporting our customers and the community.
Ron Pinder, Vancouver, July 7th, 1953, so 69 today.
When did you start to play lacrosse?
13, a bunch of us wrote in and registered for it. We hadn't seen it much of it, but I got a phone call to come out for the Bantam group. So the first practice, I wasn't sure if I had a left-handed or right-handed stick, and kind of wasn't. So I got there, got practicing, and then they decided they wanted to make a fourth team up. So my dad and Elmer Buchanan were 1949 Mann Cup with Vancouver Burrards back then. So they said, well, give us our two kids and give us a few more and we'll make a fourth team. So that was the first year. And we wound up having a small playoff thing, and we wound up winning that. And we had to use, I think, 2 peewees to make 7 runners on the floor. But our goalie was quite good. So. And
what minor organization was that?
That's in Richmond Minor. So
Richmond
yeah,
Minors.
that was about the first year the arena opened up in 1965.
How far a bike ride was it for you to go?
It was about 3 miles into Steveston back then. They had an outdoor box, and they had a few sticks. You could kind of try them out. And so there's a few people, kind of looking at bodies and sign them.
So when you went to practices, were you riding your bike all the time for that?
The outdoor box we would, but the other ones we kind of get a ride in.
Okay.
Yeah, the arena and that.
And so it was, you had a group of guys who all decided at once that they wanted to give it a try?
Our bunch wound up, there was 5 of us. Well, the 4 were my brother's age, Jerry. So they wound up midget age, so I was kind of the 1 year below them always.
Yep. Yeah. So you kind of
followed that along, And then intermediate, we had come together for a year. And then the junior thing came into Richmond.
So you got to play with your brother a bit at that point?
Yeah, I think after intermediate year, the Killarney Junior B team, there's, I think, Bobby and Brian Tasker were playing then.
Okay.
And they were in a BC playoff with Victoria. So they asked, I think there was 4 or 5 of us, their goalie, my brother, myself, I think Chuck Bohr. But there's, I think, 5 or 6 joined the team for the playoffs. I think it was 2 out of 3 with Victoria, and we lost in Victoria, came back and won in Killarney, and then had a bit of a going on in Victoria. We lost 2 players after the first period, got kicked out of the game. And we were down 6-1. I think we lost like 8-6 or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so then the following years when I think the junior team and the junior B team and the Richmond group wound up in Richmond, Ronnie Phillips and that gang brought the team out.
Okay, for the junior?
The Roadrunners first year,
Yeah, and somebody was telling me a story about that Roadrunner team, that it pulled off a pretty big situation at some point?
Yeah, so the first, I wasn't on there, I was still playing intermediate, but we went to the first few home games. They lost their first 5 or 6, I think. Yeah. And then, about halfway through, they just started clicking, and they were winning, and crowd started getting a little bigger. And then towards the end, there was my goalie, a couple of other runners, myself. We were asked to play up for the kind of the end of the season and then the playoffs. So we won the first round, and then we had to play Burnaby for the finals, 7 games, but both arenas were getting shut down to put the ice in.
Okay, yeah.
So they moved the thing to Queen's Park.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that wound up 7 games series, 4 games overtime.
Wow.
And huge crowds. By the end of it, there were people sneaking in the back door. My cousin and his wife and 2 kids, they paid our equipment manager $50 to come in the back just to get in, right? So that was quite a series. And then they said, well, now we're going on to the Minto Cup. So, I said, what's the Minto Cup? And he said, it's something that Oshawa Green Gales win every year. So don't worry about it.
So
anyway,
what year was that?
71.
Okay.
So, Peterborough was coming out.
Oh, coming out.
Yeah,
okay.
so the West hadn't won in 9 years. I think it was, yeah. So, you walk out on the floor, you're warming up, and you're looking at this bunch. They look kind of like people, like they don't look too different. They're supposed to be, very good, right?
Yes.
And same thing, got in, and we'd win a game, lose a game, overtime win, lose. It went 7 games. Last game, it was overtime. I think Walt Weaver scored 6 goals, 2 in the overtime.
Wow, wow.
And put us through to the, so all hell broke loose. Yeah.
So
good.
you won the Minto Cup, and it had been, like you say, it had been at least 8 or
A long
9
time,
years.
and I think, I remember an article Jack Crosby put out saying it was quite a big boost for minor lacrosse all around the Lower Mainland. Teams, like they were getting 5,000 to the games, and
Wow.
all the areas were coming to watch, right? So I think the minors kind of took off from that kind of point on.
That was a big
It
moment
really
for-
helped, I think, people didn't really know what it was.
to revitalize, and then a lot of things were happening back in the early 70s with the thought of the pro league. You know, there was a bit of a pro league in like 69, 70 or so.
Yeah, I think
Detroit.
I think they basically sent a team down to Portland and called it, and then sometimes they'd send an Eastern team out for a game too, but never really stuck.
That one didn't really stick.
No.
And then a few years later, 1974 and 75, that was the first NLL, and
Right.
a lot of folks from out west played in that back east.
Yeah,
you know,
their thing came out, so they were, I think, like the bishop and the organizers, I guess, they were at the Bayshore and in Vancouver, and they said, anybody interested in putting your name up for the draft, come down, and they took you and interviewed you and asked what you've done and stuff. And then, a couple of days later, you get a phone call, you were drafted by Montreal.
Okay.
And then they send paperwork out and go back. You had a schedule, what the training was going to be, where it was going to be. And then, they gave us, I guess the airfare came, you went back, and then Montreal's bunch, we wound up going up to Baie-Comeau for a week.
Yeah,
We trained 3 times a day for 7 days.
Yes. Yeah.
And in the morning, at the end, it was 1 3/4 miles. And you're out running, and one of the old guys said, "Don't go too fast, because they want you to be faster each day and getting stronger." And so it kind of slowed down. But then we have a break for lunch, go in the afternoon, do some weaves and different drills, stretching, and then finish off with a mile run. Go back to the hotel for dinner, come back at night, stretch, and then have basically an inter-squad game at night.
Okay.
And then right to bed for me. But some of the old guys would go for a beer, but they were already on the team. I still had to find a place.
So you played on that team? Or?
Well, coming back, Jim Bishop was coaching, and
Yes.
he said, I got a lot of numbers, and I said, I think you can play in the league. I could phone some other teams if you want to take a look at them. And I thought, well, just go back and see what happens with the league and stuff. But I think there was a bit of a thing. I think each team was going to try and keep a couple of field guys to kind of keep the game expanding,
Yeah, get some U.S. players. in there,
Yeah,
right?
so
Yeah.
Bruce Arena wound up there. He was all American field and soccer guy.
I actually know Bruce. And,
Yeah,
and my brother's of his era, and they played together at one point.
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
east, So.
And then I saw him years later coaching soccer in the
Yeah,
World Cup.
he was the
he
USA.
moved on. Yeah.
So soccer turned out to be
Yeah.
a big deal for Bruce.
Yeah, and then also Montreal, they're, the French-Canadian names, they wanted to keep a couple just to help.
Sure, try to build gate, that way.
Yeah,
And,
so I thought, well, I'll go back and just see, because you were making a lot of money.
Right.
And I had kind of just started a good job, and I didn't want to kind of lose out on that.
jeopardize that
Yeah.
for a league that might not make it.
Yeah, and so when I went back to work, my foreman actually was Skip Jolly. He was playing for Vancouver, I think, last year, junior, and then he moved to New West. So I worked with him every day kind of thing. Then when I got drafted, when I came back from the Pro League, I wound up with Vancouver. So we'd play against Skip every couple of days.
Okay, so you actually played NLL games. So
Well, no, I played the exhibition at the beginning, and then, so 75, we won the Mann Cup.
Okay.
And then there was a phone call, they said that Montreal asked me if I would come back to play in the playoffs. So they were down 3-1 to Boston.
Right.
And they were playing Friday. So we finished Thursday night. They had a ticket to go out Friday morning to Montreal.
Wow.
So I talked to Roscoe, my coach in Vancouver, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "No, don't bother. You were already there once. Why go back, right?" And then I think John Serby or Bob Perry, I forget, I was talking. He said, "Well, you got a chance to win 2 national things in 1 year. Why not try it, right?"
Yeah.
So I didn't even. I got on the plane Friday morning. I hadn't talked to work, but I thought, well, they're down 3-1. We'd probably win Friday in Montreal.
Right.
Sunday they had to go to Boston. I thought, if they
to win
lose
that
there,
one.
I'd be back to work on Monday morning probably or something, right? So, but when I got to Montreal that night, Bishop said, "Well, I'm going to dress you, but just sit on the bench and watch the game and see what you think, right? I probably won't put you out too much." So that I just kind of watched, and then Sunday we were going to Boston, and he said, "We kind of messed up. We couldn't get your permit to play down there because it's professional."
Okay.
So he said, when you go through customs, just tell them you're going to watch. So I checked in at customs, and the guy said, "Yeah, okay, that's fine, but don't pick up a stick while you're down there or you'll be in trouble." So we get to Boston, and we're in the hotel there, and Jim calls me, and he said, "Yeah, we can't dress you because of this whole thing."
Yeah.
So he hands me a $50 bill, and there was a guy, that Dutchie, used to be kind of the Montreal Canadiens fan club leader, he'd,
Okay.
around the hockey games, he'd be going, "Go Habs, go,"
Okay.
So anyways, he says, "Go with Dutchie and go have a beer somewhere." So we walk in this bar, and everybody in the bar knew him. So beer was free. So we had a couple of beer, went back to the setup in the gondola, watched that game, and Montreal won that game. So now we're going back to...
It's tied 3-3 now.
Yeah,
Right?
it's going back to Montreal
Okay.
for the 7th game.
Yeah.
And got a few more shifts on that game. We won that game. So
you
now
got
I
to-
had to
you got
phone
to
work and
play?
say, "I'm going to be back maybe 2 more weeks," because they had Quebec had knocked off Long
okay.
Island, I guess. So we're playing Quebec in that.
Did you score in that game that was back in Montreal? Do
I'm
you
trying to
remember?
think. I think I got one. I can't think which games. Everything kind of rolls into
Yes.
it now.
Yeah.
But I think the first one I got, I think I served in a penalty, and I kind of jumped out of the box, and I was going to go to the bench, and they just said, "Yeah, just get going," because the ball was coming up. So we actually had a 2-on-1,
Yeah.
and I got a pass and did score. And,
Okay.
So
Yeah.
then that kind of broke the ice for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, so then the Montreal Quebec series, Quebec hadn't beat Montreal all summer in Montreal.
Right. Right.
So-
Montreal was the dominant.
Well, back
team.
and at home, and so we lost the first 2. Well, actually, the first 3 games.
So Quebec.
Yeah, 2 in Montreal, 1 in Quebec, and the 3rd game there was a bit of a row there. People were hanging over the boards, and people were smashing sticks on them. So that at the end of so everybody get a shower, get your stuff, and we're on the bus as a group, because they said there's a big crowd outside,
Oh,
and
gosh.
they're not happy about. So they were, I think, because they're up 3-0, they were planning the parade route, right? So,
Oh, okay.
So we beat them the 4th game, went back to Montreal,
Yeah.
and beat them again. So now we're going back to Quebec.
Down 3-2.
Yeah,
going
and I
back,
remember,
yeah.
I think Fergus said, because there was a lot of trouble going around by our bench in Quebec, he hired a couple of professional wrestlers to come up and just sit. And if anybody that started coming down, they said, "These guys would just stand up and tell them to
Yeah,
get back."
people sort of listened.
Yeah. But I think, after we won the 2nd game, the day before we left for Quebec, we had a practice, and, Bishop's, he likes to really grind it. But
Yeah.
I think the guys, everybody's so kind of high about thinking we're coming back to, we practiced, I think, almost too hard, because everybody was flying around. And then when we got into Quebec, I think we just a little
Had
bit
overdone it, huh?
took the edge off, I think. I don't know. But they were a good team, yeah. So Gurney and Dave Evans were on the Burnaby team we beat in the Minto Cup year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we actually picked Ted Gurney up, because Dave, I think, was a little bit, he got one off the knee. I think he was a little lame.
He
So-
was injured from 73, and he said he had a tough year in 75.
Yeah, well,
for-
those, but that 71 series, I think he took one, but he was, and then Gurney kind of finished off, so we wound up picking Ted Gurney up, and Walt Weaver came on, Gord Ozenchuk, Dave Taylor. So we picked up some pretty classy guys, yeah.
Okay. I've talked to many people, and some have good things to say and also some tough things to say about Jim Bishop, because it wasn't things were different on different days or whatever.
Yeah, like I remember before we shipped up for the training camp, they had a little gym or area there with a net. And he'd put a $50 bill down for target practice, and you'd shoot, and whoever last one would win the $50 kind of thing. I mean, it's good that way, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know my brother was saying he said there's no parking lot too good to practice in. So if you're at a stadium somewhere, they couldn't get in, they'd just go in the parking lot, set up the nets, and
go to it.
Yeah, I think. And a 40-game schedule, I can't imagine playing that. That game's a hard.
Now he had a reputation of being a real taskmaster.
Yeah, I think.
How did you feel knowing? Did you know that going into talking with him and that kind of thing, or was that?
Yeah, I heard the stories. Like I know, like that Oshawa team, like he would hunt high and low for players, but then he would put them at their top conditioning. I think is what I found out, because. Like from my training in Montreal 3 times a day, I mean, I was kind of sitting in the bathtub at night going, wow. But when I came back to play in the WLA, I was probably best shape of my life. And we were always kind of a little short because a lot of guys had left for the pro league. So we were kind of putting players together all summer. But
your conditioning helped
some days you're on the first line and third line or whatever.
Running
I was quite willing to do it. Yeah.
You have a son who plays the game, and tell us about Wyatt.
Yeah. So I coached him kind of minor lacrosse for a bit. He played a couple of years in New West Juniors and a year in Burnaby Junior. Didn't go in the draft, but he wound up with the Ladner Pioneer Senior B bunch, and they went to 2 President's Cups, one in Six Nations and one in Nanaimo. But that was tough. A lot of NL guys showing up there because he didn't want to play too high level in the summer, I think. But
just keep active.
Pretty good teams, yeah. So yeah, but he said the Six Nations was an interesting experience to go back and play.
And you've done other things sports-wise. When did you do the Burrards swim team?
Well, that was coming back from Victoria. So there's a hotel right by the airport there, and they had a pool. So we'd kind of close the pub down till last call about 1:30, and there'd be half a dozen. We'd go out and just have a little swim in the pool.
Oh, okay. So that's what you were saying.
So one day we were swimming, and here comes the police officer and the manager and the bouncers, so we all started scattering, right? And the cop, Ward Sanderson was there, he called him over, he says, I want to talk to you, right? So Ward jumps out of the pool, no gear on, and he's talking to the cop, and I guess Ward is saying later that the cop said, well, you're lucky we came because the manager was going to bring the bouncers out and kick you guys out, right? So he looks over and said, well, we'll deal with the bouncers if you guys want to go. And he said, no, just get dressed. So meanwhile, Davey Evans and the rest of it, we're all in there trying to find our clothes and get going before they get arrested.
But your love affair with the horses and harness racing and that sort of thing?
Yeah, 79 was kind of a transition. My younger brother, Tom, he phones up one day and says, do you want to buy a racehorse?
Wow.
And I said, well, maybe. I don't know. So I said, what? So he said, well, he was working at Cloverdale at the racetrack in Mutual selling tickets and stuff, but he got to know some of the trainers and owners, and he said, what do you think? Because I always had interest in the thoroughbreds, but I said, yeah, we'll take a whirl at it. So we went, there was a farm in Richmond, he had his own breeding program, so he had a few horses, he had a couple of young ones for sale, so we wound up buying one, and there was an old track, used to race at Ladner, and it was set up as a training center.
Was this thoroughbreds?
Harness, the harness standardbreds.
Standardbreds.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we set up there and spent a couple of years getting your trainer's license, and then I got my actual driver's license to race them.
Yeah.
So I did that a couple of times, but yeah.
That must be exciting, huh?
That was, yeah. So the first time I had to do the qualifying drives in the morning. You had to do, I think, 10 to make sure you're not smashing into people, and so that was the most nerve-wracking thing I'd done because it was kind of foggy and you're delaying it, and I was getting kind of like, I just wanted to. So anyways, when I finally got one in, it was it's pretty neat. So I didn't spend too much time racing, but we did have a couple of winners. And
You mentioned before your dad won a Mann Cup earlier on in '49 or so. And,
49 Burrards, I think. There's him and Elmer and Harry Buchanan. The Lions' old Rocky Cavlin was the Lions trainer for a while. But yeah, there's quite a few names I kind of saw. It's an old picture I had.
Yeah, and did that? You think that motivated you?
He never mentioned too much about it because we always played baseball in the summer, and then there's always a stick there, and then finally we pick it up, and so my brother would have a baseball glove, and we'd kind of pitch it with the stick just to try throwing it, right? So we kind of had a feel for it. And then when we got going on it, he kind of started telling us all the stories about it. And he spent a lot of time coming to the box with us and just
working with you on that.
Yeah, just little things, picking the ball up and, running around the boards, kind of throwing the ball and catching it while you're running kind of thing. And just
a lot
little
of tricks
things
that he had.
just to get used to the sticks, right?
Yeah. What do you feel should be done for the game to ensure its growth and longevity?
Well, I think it's gaining traction, right? But I think it needs a big, like a boost of. I got thinking like Wayne Gretzky, right? His daughter's married to Dustin Johnson.
Yep.
He's in that new golf thing. They signed him for $150 million. So if a guy like Wayne, I know Wayne. I read I think the book said once lacrosse season started, he quit hockey and he played lacrosse in the summer. So he loves the game.
Yes.
So I'm thinking he could maybe talk to his son-in-law's sponsors and get big bucket of cash and kind of maybe start like a championship series with an American team, maybe a Canadian, and then a native team. First Nations, the whole but make it a high-end thing. And like I saw a thing just a while back, Belichick that coaches the New England Patriots, loved the field lacrosse game.
Well,
So get him involved with a guy like Bruce Arena and Rabel and those guys that are kind of intermixed with the box and field. Bring out a few football guys. He said like this new game now with the defense, if you had 4 linemen that are 6'6" and 290 that are quick, be a hard thing to break down some of these guys, right? But have like kind of a national championship, like America, Canada, and the continental team would be
almost like President's Cup in golf. Or something like that,
and make it a big, give them a year to kind of put it in, and like you say, even the box game, maybe even go to 4-side instead of 5, so you're not banging and crashing so much. More ball movement and a little more. Like I watch some of the pro league now, and guys don't touch the ball. It's like I'd rather see even the goalies throwing the ball out. You don't see that hardly anymore.
Right. There's no transition really.
Well, I remember years ago that the old, I think it was the Windsor Warlocks were in Vancouver or something. I forget the goalie, but he had like a dozen assists in the 3.
Right.
He made a save. One guy would go and he'd throw the ball to center, and the guy come out the other end, catch it.
Yeah.
It's just you're not waiting for guys to get off, right? But nice to see that come back. Maybe make the goalies use those old field sticks, a little smaller, but they can throw the ball better,
Right.
Just keep it moving.
Good. Do you have any involvement today with the game at all, or just a fan? Or
not much. Yeah, well, you see the odd game, but now it's kind of I see it on TV a bit now too. But no, not too much right now.
If you're going to name like 4 or 5 of the greatest players you played with or against,
I'll give you. I think a bunch from the '70s, and Bob Salt kind of kicked me, got me going because we were line mates, and
Bob Salt
made the floor pretty easy for me because 2 guys had to check him and left me pretty well open to. But him, the Bobby Bryan and Davey Tasker, they were good both ways. Back for the '70s, they could check, they could run the ball short man for 2. You couldn't get the ball back, right? Mm-hmm. And I think '77, all 3 of them were right around 100 points. I think there were 3 in the top 7, I think, back then. But the game was easy for them.
Yeah.
So, guys like that. And Gord Fredrickson, when he came out halfway through the year, we were practicing at Carousel, I think, and guys were jogging around the top in a T-shirt, and we go, "Who's that?" And they said, "Oh, that's Gordy Fredrickson." So what's he doing? He's coming back to play. So he came halfway through the 75s, and we wound up playing with him in the Mann Cup year.
Huh.
So that was,
He was a
he's
good
another
addition,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, he was a good, had a real nasty overhand bounce shot there, but I think he was like 1,000 some odd points when he played.
Did you ever play with Travis Cook or against Travis at all? Or?
Yeah, I discovered him because when Montreal, I think he sent me out to the power play one time. So I thought, well, I'll just go diagonally through to get to the crease.
Oh.
And boom, whack, wham, wham, wham. Like, what the heck? And this is Travis Cook, but he
Travis,
like 6'5".
he was playing defense.
Well, at that time, I think everybody was. I think it was, but next time I went around the back of the net, I didn't.
But he had the shot too.
Him,
Travis.
Johnny Grant was when he played that Peterborough. Jan McGee could shoot
McGee,
the
yeah.
ball.
Yeah, and
But
well,
Walt Weaver was
John Grant Sr. I played with him in '78.
Okay.
And he was a magician with the stick, and then his son is even. His son learned from him, John Grant Jr. And,
it doesn't.
And he's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think he's as good as there is too, right?
He was. He had quite the career.
Yeah. That Jimmy Johnson, that Peterborough team always. I remember Johnson one time. He had the ball in the stick and he's holding it behind him, and it rolls out, right? And the defenseman he picks it up and just goes, I still think he did it on purpose, I think, because he did it once more. So, some of those guys, we learned like that, we call it the Peterborough pick, because nobody used to see these backdoor picks like that ever. And we're getting bumped off all the time. It took a while to
figure out
slow
what to
that
do,
down,
right?
yeah. But it's good. I like watching the Eastern teams, actually.
So Peterborough always had tricks up their sleeve, right? Like they were very creative.
Yeah.
They had a play they called the ice cream play that they used in field lacrosse. I don't know if they used it in box. It'd all come together and
Oh, they hide the ball.
and they'd all come out cradling.
Yeah.
And then one guy would have it, but you didn't know it because he was like the least active.
Yeah.
And so everybody's watching everybody else.
I think when that started happening, we had a couple of guys, I forget what team was even on, but when they did the huddle, they would just go flying in and knock about 3 guys down, and hopefully they found the guy with the ball, right? But I remember that was just, you learned a lot from playing that Peterborough, because the 71 team, we beat them, and then 72 we went back to Peterborough, and I think it was a year there, New York Islanders were having their hockey camp there. So after they'd trained in the morning, they put the wood back on the ice.
It was the Leafs, I think.
Oh, maybe.
Somebody said it was the Leafs.
Could be, yeah.
And then they had to play on boards.
They put the boards on top of it,
water
and the
coming
condensation. So the first game, you're slipping and sliding, and we're going, what the heck? So guys, the next game, they're going to the hardware store. They got staple guns. They started putting staples in the bottom of the runners. Some guy bought a pair of broom ball shoes, but it was tough. Every time you go to pit, you slip right.
I think Wayne Shuttleworth was talking about that, and he was so upset still to this day
Yeah.
that they played a Mann Cup game, on that.
Well,
boards, right?
So we think 13-9. We gave them a bit of a game, but they were too good. We lost 4 straight, but yeah, had a good barbecue. That OMC was their sponsor, I think.
Oh yeah.
So we went to the boat place. Big table full of steaks, and one of the Peterborough guys says, "You guys want to come up the lift locks?" I didn't know what they were talking about. So we jump in the boat and went up, and that was a pretty interesting experience. Yeah. But even when they beat us, we were at the hotel. There's 3 or 4 of them came back and had a drink with us after. They were kind of still celebrating, mind you, but that was good. Yeah.
Well, very good, very good. Anything else you want to say, Ron, about the game or anything? It's your floor for however long you want.
I think I'm pretty good with. I think I'm good. Yeah.